Welcome, Alice, to Metallarium website pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Undeath, this new album. It's a time to rise from the grave and new things related to the extreme metal world. So I started with this. This is the first time that the Metallarium interview you, the band. So please introduce the band with this new album and the last one, Legends of the Different Guy, because it's a great one in 2020.
Sure, man. Yeah. The band is Undeath, like you said. We're from Rochester, New York. It's kind of like upstate Western New York. It's about 6.5 hours from New York City, so we're definitely closer to like Canada or Ohio than we are to Brooklyn, which is kind of funny. The band is myself. I do vocals. Kyle is one of our guitar players. Jared is another guitar player. We've got Tommy on bass and Matt on drums, and Matt also does all of our album artwork. We formed in I want to say like late 2018, early 2019, and we've been going steady ever since.
Great. One thing that I denoted into this, it's time to rise from the grave, compared with the previous one, Legends of the Different Kind, that your music is more grow up, more sensational, more strange. Well, had a lot of the strange for me especially. So for you, which are the best strange that the listeners will find into this new world compared to the previous work?
I think this is the first album that we wrote and recorded as a 5-piece, so when we did Lesions, it was still just Kyle and Matt and me, so there really wasn't a lot of opportunities for us to do more adventurous things musically, like having more guitar solos, more harmonies, stuff like that. So I would say the biggest strength of the new record is just the step up and like level up in instrumentation and all the new avenues that we were able to go down in the songwriting side of things. So I would just say the songs are just better.
Yeah. That's better. So I saw that the first album was released by Prosthetic and by Maggot Stomp at the first time, but this new one is just released by Prosthetic Records. So do you perhaps with this new album you will work with Maggot Stomp, or just you will work with Prosthetic?
So this one, I think we're just going to work with Prosthetic. It's there's no like hard feelings. There's no drama or anything with Maggot Stomp. Like Scott, the owner and the operator of Maggot Stomp, him and I are really good friends. I talk to him all the time. And he did a great job with the Lesions tapes. He was awesome to work with, and we just have like a really good working relationship with him. But for this record, we just kind of wanted to have everything in one place. And I think a lot of people were getting kind of confused with Lesions because they didn't know where to get the tapes because they weren't available from Prosthetic. And then they would go to Maggot Stomp looking for a vinyl or a digital copy, and they couldn't find it because he was just doing tapes. So it just created a lot of like cross confusion. And I think we just kind of wanted to simplify things a little bit in terms of where the record was available. So yeah, this time around, it's 100% going to be done by Prosthetic.
Okay. So one thing that I saw around the world with interviews, reviews, and many fans around the world is what the Legend of the Different Kind was a great success for you, especially for the band, because with that, I saw gigs, I saw reviews, fans, as you said, CD, tapes, vinyls, everything, a lot of merchandise with the new album. And this new album too. So what do you think the band, why Undeath has one of the latest successful death metal band in US, because we have a lot of bands around the world playing death metal?
Yeah, I think we just got lucky. I think I won't sugarcoat it. I think like I'm proud of the music that we make, and I think that we work really hard on everything. And obviously we're like a pretty driven and focused band in terms of wanting to like get out there and play shows and release music. And we're very diligent in our schedule, but at the same time, I think Undeath was kind of just in the right place at the right time in a lot of ways. We started the band right as there was kind of this rising wave of new death metal bands, and there was a lot of attention focused on bands that sounded like us, and we just kind of we just started at the right place, and I think we've just been very fortunate with when we started the band. I think we've been fortunate in terms of like a lot of the early publicity that we got. I think really early on we got reviews from places like Pitchfork and places like the Needle Drop, and just these really high profile like positive reviews of our music, and I think that really propelled us forward very early on. So I'm obviously super grateful for all that stuff, but I think it all just comes down to the fact that we've just been very lucky.
Yeah, yeah. So other matter that I saw in your both albums is that your cover art was did by Matt Bronin. So, and I think this is the only artist for you, because I don't see other works with other bands. So how you select this artist is the perfect artist to do the artwork from Undeath since the beginning?
Well, Matt drew our logo too, and that was kind of where the relationship with like him as the band's artist started, because he came to us with the logo really early on in the band, and none of us knew that he could draw like that, so we were kind of very pleasantly surprised, and we were like, well, shit, do you want to do the album artwork too? And he said, yeah, whatever. And he did the cover for our first demo, and then he did the cover for Sentient Autolysis, our second demo. And from then on, I just think like it's so much easier to have an artist in-house to do everything for you, because then you don't have to go through all this rigmarole and back and forth with a stranger trying to like explain what you want for a cover. Instead, it's just like your bandmate, it's your friend, and the working relationship is so much easier that way. And yeah, I think as long as Undeath is a band, I think Matt is going to be the guy that does all of our covers, because he's just a incredibly talented artist.
Okay. So talking about now in general about the extreme metal world, the word that especially this, I don't know why. As you can see, the words into the titles like grave, like death, like gore, this kind of stuff always is around the death metal, especially into the old school death metal. So what are you inclined in your name and death? And with this new album, it's time to rise from the grave. Grave is I don't know. It's a common word into the death metal world.
Yeah, in terms of like the lyrics and in terms of like the more like conceptual aspect of the band, I guess like we don't take ourselves that seriously. I think there's a lot of bands out there that really want to try to imbue their music with a lot more spiritual and existential meaning and stuff like that, and I think that's awesome. But for us, like we're just fans of death metal, and the death metal that we like is stuff like Cannibal Corpse and Autopsy and Cryptopsy, and all the classics, all the greats, and all those bands are primarily concerned with just death and gore and violence and all the macabre stuff. So I think we try to take inspiration from the greats in that sense, and also like that stuff is just fun to write about. It's fun to write about super gory and super violent subject matter. So I think it's a well that hasn't gone dry for us yet. So we're gonna keep doing that for a while.
Okay. So into this matter of talking about the lyrics, so why all people that when they talk about the death, about gore, murder, everything like related to this stuff, usually they love the movies about terror, about horror, about this kind of stuff. Do you like this kind of movies, horror, this kind of stuff? Are you into these ones, or prefer to do perhaps to write about the death, but you see perhaps romantic movies? Who knows?
It's funny you asked that. Like I do like horror movies, but I'm not really like a horror movie aficionado or anything. I'm familiar with like the classics, all the Evil Dead and Hellraiser, all those movies, but I don't really sit down and watch horror movies that often. I think that's way more like Kyle's territory, and Kyle writes most of the lyrics in the band too. So I think that's like his wheelhouse. For me, I mean, it's funny that you say like romantic movies and stuff. Like I do kind of watch like fantasy movies and like romantic movies and stuff way more often than horror movies. That's just kind of like the shit that I enjoy. But I think for Kyle specifically, yeah, he gets a lot of inspiration from horror movies for sure.
Okay, okay. So talking now about your guttural parts, about your voice, no? Which when you start the band, you hear a lot of bands, as you said, no, all top secret tops, this kind of stuff. Which frontman from the past inspire you to do this kind of work in your guttural voice?
Corpse Grinder, 100%. I just think Corpse Grinder from Cannibal Corpse, I think he's like, by my estimation, just the best person who's ever done death metal vocals. I think like his style, his phrasing, his like just his presence on stage, I think he's just like the epitome of what a death metal frontman should be. So when we started the band, you know, I knew that I was nowhere near him in terms of my skill. Like obviously I can't do what he does, at least not yet, but I just wanted to try to emulate him as much as possible. So I would say Corpse Grinder is definitely like my North Star.
Okay. And what do you think? When I saw a lot of tweeters from Chris Barnes from the first vocal from 6 Feet Under, so from Cannibal Corpse, now 6 Feet Under, and they said that the new era from the death metal bars are shit. It's like that they work especially, and he is the best death metal, best death metal of all times. We know that he did a lot of great albums in the past, but now their voices with 6 Feet Under is not that than they used to be in the past. So what is your opinion about these things of these thoughts with this person?
You know, I think him saying that, you know, the death metal as a genre is like dead now, I think it's a foolish thing to say. And I feel bad for him for believing that, because, you know, it doesn't take long to realize that there's more great and exciting and vital death metal coming out right now than ever before. You know, there's no shortage of really incredible, inspiring death metal bands coming out every single day. You know, I hear like 5 or 6 new bands a week that I get really stoked about, you know, and it's just whether it's like a band that's already been around for a couple years or a band who only has one demo. Like I feel like I'm constantly discovering new death metal bands that I love. And I think for somebody like Chris Barnes to say that, you know, death metal is over and there's no good bands anymore, you know, at that point you're making a choice just not to see what's around you. You're ignoring all the amazing talent that's coming up all the time. So I think it's a bad opinion.
Yeah. But the old guard thinks like that. All bands, especially from the 90s and the 80s, thinks that the death metal now is from death metal from the desk noise, and is not a real matter like the 80s and 90s, no? So into this matter, relating your answers, you talk about the new bands. I think the releases, the bands, I think the labels too. Every day you can see a lot of labels, a lot of productions, a lot of everything. So do you think with this kind of saturated into the death metal, the old school death metal will saturate in the next 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's funny, you know, I feel like when you get older, you kind of start to believe that everything was better when you were doing it, you know? And I understand why somebody like Chris Barnes would believe the things that he does, because, you know, he was around when death metal was starting. You know, he was in one of like the first death metal bands ever. So of course he's going to have really strong and passionate opinions on it. And I'm sure 20, 30 years down the line, I'm going to be looking back at this era of death metal and I'm going to be saying, oh yeah, you know, the 2020s were the best time for death metal ever. You know, everybody making it now doesn't know what they're doing. I hope I don't think like that, but I feel like I probably will. But I don't know, you know, I feel like there's still so many other people who are in more established, more like old school death metal bands that still have a healthy appreciation for new death metal. You know, I know, granted they're not as old as a band like Cannibal Corpse, but Trevor from Black Dahlia Murder, you know, their band's been around for 20 something years at this point. and he still is constantly championing new bands. He's constantly talking about new death metal bands, and I think he has like the exact right attitude when it comes to new music. He's just excited about new music, and I think that's like the attitude that I would hope for from anybody, you know.
Mhm. Okay, talking about the voices, about talking about Trevor and Stan, about all other kind of voices around the world. Which are which are your top five vocalists from all the times in the death metal? Because for me, when I did the last article, I talked with the 10 first. We like George Corpse Grinder, Chris Barnes, Frank Mullen from US, and from Europe there is Carl Whittles from Borg Thrower. This is LG Petrov from Entombed, a classic one. Barney from Napalm Death. So for you, which are your top five, the best death metal vocalists from all the world, all the time?
That's a really tough question. Off the top, I mean, I feel like I would need to sit down and really think about this for like days, but off the top of my head, top five would be like Corpse Grinder is obviously on that list. I would do Lord Worm from Cryptopsy. I think he's awesome. Carl from Bolt Thrower, like you said, he's also like just a fucking incredible vocalist. You know, in terms of, I gotta put like a more modern guy on there too. I forget his name, but it's the guy who sings in Acephalix, and he also sings in that band Vastum. I'm gonna look it up right now, actually, because I want to get this right. Vastum. Just bear with me for 2 seconds.
Okay.
Daniel Butler. I think he is just an awesome frontman. I think his voice is great. So he was my number 4, and then number 5. You know, I also got to put Mike DeSalvo from Cryptopsy on there. You know, it's kind of funny to have 2 Cryptopsy vocalists in my top 5, but I think Whisper Supremacy and then You'll Beg, the records that he's on are fucking awesome, and I think he's just a super underrated frontman with a great, unique voice. You know, he kind of brings like a hardcore sensibility to a lot of his performances, and I don't think he gets a lot of the credit that he deserves. So I think that would be my top 5.
Great. So Other Matter is like a trend, as you can see, with Calcapitation, with Monument of Misanthropy, and a lot of bands into the metal, especially into the brutal and the death metal. They love to talk about gore matters, but at the same time they like vegetarian or vegan people. So that's a new wave in here in my country too, because I know persons from the other cities that at the beginning loves to eat meat, this kind of stuff, but now with this new kind of trend into the brutal death metal, they love to write, they love to pray, they love to pray plants and don't eat meat. So what do you think about this trend? Because it's very counterproductive thing. They talk about blood, they talk about death, but in the other way, they love to eat lettuce, they love to eat this kind of stuff.
Yeah, you know, it is interesting. It's very contradictory, like you say. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to get flack for saying this, but I mean, it's true. Like, I feel like the vast majority of people, not the vast majority, but I feel like a lot of people who play metal, who perform in metal bands and in whatever capacity, tend to be like pretty introverted, sensitive people. And there's obviously some extroverts and some huge personalities in metal, but at least in my travelings and the experiences that I've had, like, you know, whether it's metal or any kind of music, the people who are really artistic in a public way tend to be kind of shy, kind of introverted. And I think when you have kind of a more empathetic, sensitive personality, that lends itself very much to adopting like a lifestyle like veganism or vegetarianism, because you know that empathy translates to empathy for animals and stuff like that. So it makes sense to me, but it is funny like how contradictory it is when you read like death metal lyrics and stuff. Yeah. Personally, I'm not vegan. I've dabbled in vegetarianism like now and again over the years. You know, I was vegetarian for like 3 or 4 years, and then I stopped, and then I started again, and I've been pretty stop and go in the past. But yeah, I've been just like trying to eat clean, but I still eat meat. I've been on that for the past like 2 or 3 years. So yeah, whatever lifestyle works for you is fine by me. But yeah, it doesn't really come to a huge surprise to me that a lot of metal people are also vegans.
Yeah, just into the death metal, because thrash metal is the same way. And I don't know why the extreme metal music is like that, because if you hear now the bands from this era, all these kind of bands, this has a lot of attachment with this vegan, vegetarian. And also the black metal has a new trend, the depressive, this post metal. So with I don't know, with the, so why do you think the I don't know, the trends are into the metal into the metal extreme now?
Yeah, I think it's probably like a ton of different factors to play into that. But I mean, I would say like what I was saying before, a lot of people who are just artists or artistic tend to also be more empathetic, more sensitive in their beliefs and in their feelings. So it kind of lends itself to a lifestyle like veganism, because if you are a largely empathetic and caring person, that's going to translate over to not wanting to eat animals, not wanting to take an animal's life for your meat consumption. It makes sense to me. Personally, I don't abide by it. I mean, I fully support anybody who wants to try veganism and go for that if it's important to them. But I enjoy eating meat too much, so I'm going to keep doing it. But beyond that, I think metal is so widespread now. With stuff like the internet, with social media. So many people with so many different backgrounds and lifestyles have access to metal more than ever before. So it's entirely possible that you have somebody who already was really into veganism and really into animal rights and animal welfare and stuff like that, and then they get into metal later on, and then they expose all of their fellow metal people in the scene to these ideas, and the ball kind of goes from there. So I think it's just a lot of exposure to a lot of different ideas.
Okay. Well, one thing that I said is I said this about the a lot of productions into the death metal, in all the styles. But now with this kind of stuff, we have new methods of hearing music with the Tidal, with the streaming platforms, Tidal, Spotify, iTunes, etc. So into this matter, the new generations prefers to hear the music with 1, 2, 3, or maximum 4 songs from an album. So for you, why the albums doesn't have the same impact compared to the 80s and now the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s? And what does band needs to do to improve or to encourage to listens of all songs from an album?
That's a really good question. I think people's listening habits have just changed. I think back in the 80s and 90s, the album was obviously the preferred listening format, because things like streaming and listening to music freely on the internet didn't exist. So the only way that you could really consume music, especially music like metal, was by buying the full record. And at that point, even if you really were just interested in one song or 2 songs, you had to get the entire album in order to hear them. So it makes sense that was the primary method of releasing music back in the day. But now, the landscape has completely changed. The big thing is just releasing singles, putting singles on playlists, creating curated playlists around vibes and atmospheres and moods and stuff like that. So the concept of releasing an entire album is way more of an artistic statement than a necessary choice, but for a band like Undeath, and I think for a lot of metal bands, we all grew up listening to albums as our preferred listening medium. We all love listening to a full record front to back and just kind of getting that experience. So I think ultimately, as an artist, as a musician, what it comes down to is just what you're trying to achieve, what message you're trying to send. Because if you go the route of just releasing singles, there's way more of a potentiality for you to get on like huge Spotify or Apple Music playlists and stuff like that. But if you still go the route of releasing a whole album, then that you're kind of harkening back to an era of music that's very slowly kind of becoming forgotten. So it just depends what you're into. But for Undeath, I mean, we all love records, and I think we're just going to keep releasing full albums because that's what we like to do.
Great. So we are very close to end this interview, and one question that I love to ask all death metal bands is why the logo from the bands from this kind of music are illegible? Because when you try to read the band, usually it's like a bug like a bug on the wall, like the blood on your, like the blood on the floor. So there's no one has sense into this kind of. So why the bands, especially into the brutal slam death metal, all the logos are illegible?
You know, I think it's like an anti-marketing kind of thing, because obviously the idea of having a band logo is that it's going to be legible so that people can go look up the name of your band and listen to it. But there's kind of like an underlying idea that when you release a logo that is completely illegible and you can't tell what the fuck it's saying, then you're kind of like saying to people, you know, our band is so intense, like you don't even get to look us up. You don't even get to know our name. And I know for a lot of metal fans, like that's really enticing. And for me, it's like when I see a band logo that is just like a mess, like when I look at like Blood Incantation's logo or like Triumph or Foul's logo, just like these completely unintelligible squiggly line logos, it makes me want to listen to the band more, because there's kind of an association these days where when the band logo is insane, the band's also probably going to be like pretty fucking crazy sounding too. So I think it's kind of like it's a mindset kind of thing with metal bands. You know, it's they're making a statement in terms of like what you should expect when you listen to their bands.
Okay. So talking a little bit about this, it's time to rise from the grave. What are the future plans from this album? Perhaps release a new video from the future, or perhaps a tour here, a Latin tour here.
Yeah, I mean, we would love to come play Mexico. That would be huge. We had tentative plans before COVID happened to come down and play the Total Death Over Mexico Fest in Mexico City, but you know, COVID happened, and then the rescheduled date didn't work for us, so we couldn't come down. But definitely is something we want to do soon for sure. As far as like videos and stuff, yeah, totally. We have another video and another single off the album dropping next week, I think. So that'll be cool. You know, we just announced a pretty huge like United States tour 2 days ago with Dying Fetus and Frozen Soul, and that's going to be crazy. This year, yeah, we have a lot of touring coming up. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to like Europe or the UK or anything like that this year. I mean, we'll see, but COVID is still so rampant, and like travel restrictions and stuff are still so confusing. Like it's just a matter of when it's going to be sensible and safe for us to travel overseas, but it'll happen eventually. I don't know when, but I'm hoping very soon. But if you live in the United States, you're definitely going to have multiple chances to see Undeath this year for sure. And we'll try to get down to Mexico as soon as possible.
Okay. Well, Alex, the sad times arrived at this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one as I did. Thank you very much for your time. This new album is a great one. I listen all days to do this interview too. So anything want to add for your Latin American fans and Metallerium readers?
Thanks for the support. You know, keep listening and to sick underground death metal, and just keep the spirit alive, because we need it these days more than ever. And thank you for listening, and thank you for all the support.